to reality. And sometimes I'll be saying something that will make sense to some people, and other people will just go, that's crazy. Because I am going to be talking about the core of consciousness today. I realize that there are a lot of subjects that are important out there in the world, like the environment, for example. It's important that we do everything we can to save Mother Earth and help her in every single way that we can, and to study and understand what global warming and the ice ages are, because they're linked together. We haven't figured out now yet. I don't think the Republicans have figured out now yet. But it's always global warming before the ice age, every single time.
We up the sound. We can't hear back here.
You still can't hear in the back?
Can't hear the door.
I can't hear you either. Maybe we need to get a technician in the back so they can hear what you're talking about and work together on it. Okay, I think it's happening. Well, I hope that you fix this as soon as possible. I'm not going to get into what's really important for a few minutes, so don't worry. Anyway, in my own life, I have been working on all kinds of levels, besides the environmental issues that I got into in the 60s. And you know, we were just blown away by the reaction from the governments and everything, and what we were trying to do. You think that you're going to try to help your planet and help you, but they don't. And that's just the hurdles that we've been up against for many, many, many years. It's all changing.
Louder, please.
So, can you fix it? Let me try the microphone. That's probably a good idea.
Just close the door.
There.
You see a handheld. They're usually not there.
Way better.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
So the handhelds are about every 11 years. So, besides environmental issues and these kind of things, I have been tracking with and studying almost every single thing you can imagine. From UFOs and ETs and ITs and alternative forms of healing and medicine, alternative forms of energy. I've witnessed over 40 0.3 energy machines that work perfectly. And it's all in place. They still won't let us do it. But that's going to change. Everything's going to change as you change. It's the way it is. You're seeing it in Egypt right now, and it's going to keep going. It's not going to stop because the global brain of internet is getting stronger and clearer. It's literally a global brain. As soon as we get into the global heart, which is in the center of the earth, and when we understand what that is, and after that, it's over. It's over for all these, for all the governments and religions and everything else that are trying to stop this, because we're going to know, and this is just a matter of time. And I don't think that time is very long from now. So, I have notes. I have to look at my notes. It's a lot of notes. Okay. I can do what Sarah Palin does. I'm terrible. Okay, I want to be clear. I'm trying to not hide who I am or where I'm from and what my purpose is here, and I'm not going to do that here either. I am not human. I am an ET. I'm a multi-dimensional ET. I'm also a multidimensional IT, and there's a big difference. ITs are inner terrestrial, from inside the Earth. I am both inside the Earth and extraterrestrial from that. And the world I come from does not have any stars and planets. It's a whole different way of existing, but you are all going to know what this is. Because as you'll find out if I have time to do it all, this is where we're going. You're going to go where I came from. And I am part of the Great White Brotherhood. I am intimately connected with the first and the last order. The first order is Alpha and Omega, Order of Melchizedek. And I am Melchizedek, I am not a priest. And there's lots of Melchizedeks, I'm not unusual. In this galaxy alone, there's over 10 million of them. It's anybody who has been able to go through all 144 dimensional levels and be stable. That's basically all it takes. and then life says, aha, there's one of those guys who do all that stuff, and it takes you and it uses you. And so I see it used all the time, and I don't mind, because eventually you find out that there is nothing to do but to be of service. There just simply isn't anything else. That's all there is. And you're going to be faced with this too. As you begin to understand more and more and more, and you become this light out of the world, which is what happens, you can't just hold it here and sit in your bedroom and watch television. I mean, you have to share it. It's just this law of the universe. You have to give back. And you'll find a way to do that. And you're going to find a huge audience as time goes on. People want to know. And by that time, you will know what it is that you need to teach. I'm also connected to the last order of the Great White Brotherhood, which is the Brotherhood of the Seven Rays, which is the geographical location is in Bolivia, South America. They have a very specific purpose. The ones in the middle, there's 70 orders in the middle, I don't even know that. I don't even know who they are. It's not my job. Okay, I'll explain that. I'm not going to use any images today, except for, well, if it was, okay. I was going to put the flower of life up here, but it hasn't happened yet. Oh, it was? There it is. Okay. I was just going to leave that one thing there because in this, really silently, is everything. It is literally everything there is. There is nothing else. And I will try to explain it. But what I want you to do today is just use your imagination and not to get involved in images and screens, because we are so involved with television and internet and all these things that it distracts from what we're trying to do, because we're going to try to go within to understand who we are. The name of this talk is Reality is Consciousness. Now, if you were just beginning, that is kind of like a mystery. What does that mean? That the reality, this word is actually part of your consciousness. And we'll slowly unfold what that means. If you understand that reality is consciousness, the moment you really truly understand that, your evolution is going to skyrocket really, really fast. Because you just hit the chord of the universe. And everything that you, from that moment forward, is just a very rapid unfolding. It just happens. So when I talk about reality, I only need this for a few minutes. When I talk about reality, what I'm talking about is that looking at the universe and all the stars and planets and galaxies and quasars and all the stuff that's out there, and the planets and the planet Earth and on, I'm talking about that, and I'm also talking about a lot more. I'm talking, there are many, many other worlds that we can't see. There's far more that we can't see than we can see. And I'm not talking about doing instruments that can look at X-rays or microwaves or anything else like this, parts of the electromagnetic field. I mean, there are other worlds, literally, and they all intersect each other at the same point, which is any point, anywhere. Every single universe in the world intersects through that single point in the universe. And so there just is whatever there is. And that's what I mean by the entire thing, all of the existence. And then on top of that, there are universes that no one knows about at all. I'm not talking about other dimensional levels or parallel worlds or any of those kinds of ideas. There are entire universes, more than you could count in your lifetime, that are not connected to this one in any way at all, except one. And that is in the tiny sacred place of the heart. It's the only place you can connect to. There's nothing out there that connects to these other places.
Louder.
Okay. Is it better? I didn't have to clap, I didn't hold it. Okay, all right, I'll hold it up here. So far we have, and so it's going to take me a few minutes to explain really what I'm talking about when I say that reality is consciousness. I'm not going to get there yet, but we will very soon. Right now, most of us, not everybody, I'm sure in this room, but most of us are living in polarity consciousness. This was a creation from when we fell, from my way of seeing, about 13,000 years ago, more or less. And when we fell, we came out, if you want to talk about it in dimensional levels, we fell from the fourth dimension to the third dimension. And we came down about almost a full octave and a half down into this place. This is a very, very dark place that we're in right now. That's one way of looking at it. There's another way that's a lot simpler. Babies can understand it. All we did was move from our heart to our brain. We just made a little journey from here and up to here. And when we got here, it took us a while to figure things out, but we still haven't really figured them out. And in polarity consciousness, we see everything as good or bad, or black or white, or male or female, etc. And we're about to leave that. We're about to completely and totally, 100% drop it, and we're going to go into unity consciousness, where we are still in the polarity, but we're not of it. We understand it from another level, and we end up in the middle between them. We're not black or white or gray, right in the middle. We don't really perceive it in the same kind of way that we do right now. And this is where Ascension, this is the first step of Ascension. At that point, we are going to transition from the third dimension into the fourth dimension, and we're going to go specifically into the seventh, eighth, and ninth overtones of the fourth dimension. And depending on how we perceive things, we will end up in one of those three worlds. And then from there, these bodies are going to mutate. If you notice, the Egyptians spent a long time trying to get their bodies from here to the next world, through the mummification and all the things that they were doing. And the Christians, which came out of Egypt, they're doing the same thing through resurrection, trying to bring their body with us. Why were they doing that? The reason is because this body is a baby on the next level. You must have your body with you. That's all you need. You don't need anything else, just your body. And it can even be really in bad shape. You can be missing arms and legs and all kinds of stuff. It doesn't matter. Just get there with whatever you got left over. Because once you get there, you're going to find that you have total control of creation. You will be able to fix that in a blink of an eye and turn it all back to the way it should be. And actually, people, when they get there, they spend a lot of time. They're so fascinated with it. They get their body all fixed up, and they go, oh, maybe I'll kind of look like this, and change the direction to something else, and be taller, shorter, be this or that. And they spend time doing that for a while until they realize, well, this is boring. And then they look for the next thing, and it automatically starts unfolding. In the same way, when you were born here as a little baby, and when you were born here as a little baby, the first thing you started doing is growing. You started getting bigger. And that's exactly what's going to happen on this next level of existence. This body is going to start growing. And the females are going to get to be about 10 to 12 feet high. And males are going to be about 14 to 16 feet high. And you're going to have this giant head with this huge brain in it. And then when you get fully adult, which happens extremely fast compared to what we do now, it only takes about 2 years. When you get to that level, then everything makes sense. You have the brain power and understanding to know what you can't really understand now. You understand, which puts you in position to go to the next level. And we are going to go through every single level. And then I want to touch on what this is. The reason I'm here, and there are a lot of other people besides the Ascended Masters that are here. There are people coming from all over the universe right now. And many of you, if not almost all of you, all are one of those people. How many people know that you're not really human? Okay, that's not 20% or so. How many people remember where you came from? I really do remember. Okay, it's usually a little less. Well, so here, what is going on is that the universe, the Mayans, which are talking about 2012, which is all the cycles of the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, and all these different other planets around us that are affecting it. These cycles that are all coming to a close on December 21st, 2012. But there is another cycle. And the Mayans don't know this, the Hopi don't know this, the Zulu don't know this, the Kogi might know this. I haven't actually asked them that question. The Orakos might know this. I don't think that the Waitaha or I don't think anybody else would know this, and the Tibetans might know this. But there is the largest cycle in existence is ending at the same time. It's changing everything. This is the reason why the Greys, when they were here, began to abduct people. The 5.5 million people that were taken, or more, that were taken aboard those ships. And the reason that happened is they were not involved in this. They came in here in very early 1900s, about 1910 or so. And they were on another project. They were trying to solve something that we were doing. And right in the middle of that, right in whatever it was, I don't know, it's early 1980s or somewhere in there, they became aware of that this big cycle was going to end. It was a huge problem for them because they're a technological civilization. They gave up their emotional body, their feminine side, and in so doing that, they were not able to make the transition. What is about to happen is that we're going to go from an octave of universes, which is what we're in right now, to another octave of universes. In other words, this universe we're in right now is very soon simply not going to exist. It won't be here. Europe is not going to be here. It won't exist. It may be used again sometime, but very soon it won't be here. It's not what you think it is. It's not even close to what most people think it is. We think it's real, but it isn't real. It doesn't exist in the way that we think it exists. It's part of our consciousness. It's part of our awareness. It's a projection from within us and from a very specific place in our body, which we'll talk about very soon. And so that's going to disappear, and we're going to reappear in an entirely new world, and we're going to be babies cute. We won't know anything. We're going to be completely confused for a while. It's going to feel very good. We're going to lose all of this, what we now know. It's not going to be applicable in this new world. We're going to have to start over. I hope I'm not going too fast, because I know that this is a big step. The Greys could not get through this because it means that between these dimensional worlds, not just between the third dimension or the eighth dimension or the 100th dimension or anything like that, but between an entire octave to another one, there is something between them that is very interesting. It's a void space that does not allow anything physical to be in it. So no physical thing can get through. The only thing that can get through is spirit. And spirit has to have certain relationships within itself and around itself. You'll know exactly what to do when that happens. But you can't take anything physical with you. And for the Greys, that was a huge problem because they're a technological society. Their spaceships can go into all 144 dimensional levels, but they can't go into 144. They can't get over it. And when they realized that the cycle was going to end, I'm sure that they actually felt, probably felt something anyway for the first time. Because it was a problem. And that's why they abducted everybody and got them on and took our emotional body and their mental body, their memories and their wisdom from their point of view, and combined them into another body. That's who Bashar is, who is here now. He's a great guy, he's real. And I'm glad that he's here. He's coming from about 300 years in the future. And his example for us is important. But he comes from, if you were to actually see Bashar in his actual shape, it would be very different than a human being or a Grey. They're very tall and skinny. But we become very good friends in the future because we have the same emotional level. We're a lot smarter than we are. But once we get into fourth dimensional consciousness, we quit and that's what it is. So, we've been kind of rambling on, so I'm going to go back to my right here. Okay, I've come to the place where I don't need this instant now, and I would like to, before I begin talking about something that I feel really is important to you guys, and something that you really need to understand and to know, to progress further into Ascension. I'm going to use a little NLP on you right now and let you watch a video, a music video, whatever you guys can. Is it all queued up? It is? Okay, just 1 second. Okay, can you turn down the, can you drop the lights a little bit? Yeah? Oh, yes. This is, Kristen is the one who did, created this video. Wow.
Hello, my name is Kristen Franklin, and I'm with Environmental Music Films. And these films are put together with conscious sound, and of course the intention is from the heart for the highest good of universal welfare. And oral words can show it. It comes into the sound in the heart of the sound. And that's where we go with these environmental music films. And I hope you will feel something from this. It is my joy to do so. Thank you for allowing me to do so.
This is called Sirius, from the star Sirius. It was the last place that I was before I came here. It was only a journey along the way, but I'm very close to the Sirius. I understand them. And so, enjoy this.
Thank you.
the tongue? Well, it's very clear. First of all, there's a sac that encloses the heart and comes up, and the whole thing flows up and becomes the tongue. And so there's a physiological connection that you can see. I forgot what it's called right now, but there's a name for it. And you can actually see that they're connected. But when that little description I gave you just a few minutes ago about how we went from the sphere to all the various levels, and it became a heart, and then the body emerges out of it. The first thing that comes out, is it an arm, a leg, a head, or a brain? What comes out first? The very first thing that emerges out of the heart is the tongue. The tip comes first. And so from seeing that, from pure science, it's obvious, you can see why there's a direct connection between that particular place and the heart itself, the surface space of the heart. So the next thing to understand that is in the mapping of human consciousness is the tongue. The next thing that's important to know is the roof of the mouth. The roof of the mouth has something on it, whether you're male or female, that what I'm about to say is going to sound a little weird, but it's fact. There is a vagina on the roof of your mouth. It just happens to be there, hidden away. And it's literally, it's no other way to say it, because what is now beginning to happen here is there is going to be sex between the heart and the brain. Actually, it really is, and it feels like it too. And so the heart brings its energy up through the tip of the tongue, and it comes out, and the tongue becomes male. And it goes to the vagina, and it goes specifically, when you're looking for, where is the spot on the roof of the mouth? You know, people spend as much as 20 to 30 to 40 years trying to look for that spot on the roof of the mouth and trying to find it. It's one of the biggest obstacles. We can show you exactly where it is in return, so you know precisely where it is when we get into the workshop. But it is exactly in the center, and if you know where your hard palate ends and the soft palate begins, it's on the hard palate just before you go into the soft palate. And some people, most people in this room, I would say at least 85%, maybe 90%, it's just flat. You don't know it's there. But when you stimulate it, it swells up and it becomes this little bump. It literally becomes the clitoris. And some people have a hole there. How many people have a hole right in that place? More than one. The problem, usually it's about 10%. About 1 out of 10 people. Pardon? It's at the roof of the mouth, and it's where you have a hard palate and a soft palate. The hard palate is like a drum stretched tight, and then when you're going with your tongue, if you go along, you'll feel that it gets kind of ripply and soft. As soon as you feel that, you've gone too far. You have to come back, and it's right just on this side. If you start massaging that place, what now happens with the rest of the mapping, this is probably a good place for questions. So I don't know how, I'm going to have to go through all of this. Right. I'm going to have to do this in a longer experience, longer period of time. This usually literally takes the traditional systems like Kundalini Yoga, Kriya Yoga, and these kind of steps. If you talk to those teachers and say, how long does it take for someone to master this? Seldom is it less than 20 years. But I found that if you are clear enough and you understand what it is, this is part of the problem, is most of the gurus and teachers that are teaching this don't understand it. If you really get in there and say, what is this, what's happening, they don't know. They've just been told that this is what you do, and they don't really know what's going on. But if you really understand what's going on, you can get it. And usually in a group this big, I can get about 35% in one day. I don't know exactly how to do it. The rest of them, about another 35% in usually a couple of months. And then the other ones have problems because they've got emotional problems they've got to work on. And in spirituality, you must deal with your emotional problems, or you find a ceiling that you can't move through. It's not an option. And you have to do it. If you have an emotional problem, which just got to go with. And Okay, we're going to keep going now. And that particular spot goes up through a chain up to the thallus glands up here. There's these two egg-shaped glands that are a little bit toward the back of the head. And those glands, when it's being stimulated, when you are in your heart space and you're moving the tongue on that particular spot, it stimulates those glands and they start firing alpha rays. And it fires massive alpha rays. It's like 3,500 to 4,000. It's not normal. It's very high. And you have the four quadrants of the brain begin to fire. And as soon as they fire in a balanced, strong, powerful way, which might not happen in one day, it might take a long time. But when it happens, a green light will appear in front of you. If you don't see the green light, you are not creating enough alpha. You're going to be happier. That's what alpha is. It's joy. It's like, remember Peter Pan? Big happy thoughts. It's true, really. If you want to fly, you have to be joyful. And so this is a place where you have to be childlike. The more serious you are, the more degrees you have and all these kind of things, and the more you're into them, the more likely it's going to be hard for you. You need to let go of all those kind of things and just get into this sensation and this feeling. The moment that happens, the next thing you do is you shift your attention from while you're in your heart to your pineal gland. And the gland itself literally is the third eye. It is from Jacob Liberman and his work through Light, a book he wrote called Light, the Medicine of the Future, and he's one of the experts in the world on this. The pineal gland is an eyeball. It is hollow. It has color receptors inside of it. It has a lens on top of it for focusing light, but it's looking up and not instead of out this way. It's 90 degrees off of these eyes. It's a single eye looking up. And it's situated in such a place that it's in the plenitude. So the light that it's receiving, that it's concerned with, is not physical light from the sun, but the light of prana, or life force energy that's moving down that tube. You have to, with intention, just as you take your intention now, that move my eyes over here, that same intention that moved that eye over there can move that eye inside there too. With your intention, you move it so that it turns and looks out through your third eye. Where is that opening? Take the tip of your tongue and your tip of your nose to your chin, and then move that up to the tip of your nose, and without changing the shape, bring it down. That is extremely close to the precise place where the eye looks out of. It is for this reason that the Hindus and the Tibetans have you slightly cross your eyes so that you're looking up to this place. Because if you try to do it and you're looking up through your normal eyes, nothing happens. And so you must look out through way up here, which is unusual. And that's where, so you turn the eye and you focus it in that direction. What is in the way between that spot is another gland, the pituitary gland. And that gland has a chakra point also. It's actually, you're doing it from the chakra to the chakras. It's not, the gland has to do it, but it's actually, the chakra is right in the pineal. It's almost on top of it. It's right there. The gland for the pineal gland and the pineal chakra are separated by space. It's the same way with your heart chakra. Every chakra has a gland or a organ that is associated with it. And so the eyeball turns and it looks at that place while you're in your heart, rubbing the tip of the tongue in that particular place and firing alpha waves to get to a certain level, and you get this green light, and you're looking over there at that place when it's right, when the alpha is strong enough, when all of the parts of the brain come together at one time, this amazing thing happens. And what happens is this sort of foggy green light that's in front of you suddenly turns into a spiral. This is what happens almost all the time. And it makes a spiral like this, and it goes right down to the chakra of the pituitary gland, and it links with it. You can feel it. It's almost like a jolt when it links with it. It links with it. Sometimes the spiral won't be a spiral. For a few people, it becomes concentric rings. So you'll see it'll turn into a circle, and then a smaller circle, and a smaller one, but they're spaced out so that they're and there's a few other things it can do. They're rare. Sometimes it'll turn into a square, and you'll see like a Hindu mandala in there. It's amazing. I mean, the first time I ever saw this. And then a little one inside, a square, little square, little square, little square, and go down to it. There's also reports that people see it as a tube that goes between the two. The psychic phenomenon, it doesn't matter. But you will know. You will know for sure when you see this happen. It won't be, that really happened? No, you'll know. You feel it, and you can see it. When it connects to, when the pineal connects to the pituitary, while you've got all these things going at once, it connects. The next step is really easy. There's another chakra in space in front of you. From the tip of your nose, the tip of your chin, take that as your measuring stick, put it like this, and right with his fingers say, you have a chakra point right out there. And with your intention, you ask it to go through, and from the pituitary to the, from the pineal to the pituitary to this other one, which has a gland inside of here also. I don't want to say what it is. And when all three of you connect, at that moment, a series of things occurs. First of all, your head grows. Science has actually mapped this and recorded it. You have a halo. It's a very specific size. It's in a perfect circle, sphere. And if you were in a dark room, you would have to photograph it. Your head begins to glow in the dark. And simultaneously with that, and it's actually better if you do this before you begin this process, is the pineal gland has certain attributes that are not visible to most people. I mean, even people who are very good at seeing auras usually can't see these because you have to know they're there. It's true with all things in psychic abilities. If you don't know it exists, you can't see it. You have to have an inkling that it exists before you can begin to step into that world. So it's like a dowser. A dowser can douse for anything, but you can't douse for something they don't know exists. And so it's the same kind of thing. And so prior to this, the pineal gland in the center of the head has these 8 beams of light, and they're tubes. They look like fluorescent tubes that come out of the body, and they look like they've just been cut off on the end. And they're about 1 hand length long. About 1 hand length from here. The ones on the sides are a little longer, like one in the throat that you can't see. And when you look at someone that actually has what you've just done, by the way, is you've opened up your third eye completely. You are now functioning on another level of potential human consciousness. And it's an absolutely important step to take before Ascension begins. Anything that happens prior to that time, in my way of saying, is just beginning the process. But the process doesn't really take off until you have done this step. But there's more to this. Now, once these beams are out, they actually connect with the sphere of light that's around here. And there is a procedure for moving those beams out. You can do it, and most people can do it usually in a single day. It just takes a little bit of time and practice, and you can get them all out. It might take you a few weeks to get them out strong, because sometimes they get droopy, and they get they're not this perfect geometrical stuff, but it doesn't, for most people, it doesn't take too long until they're out there perfectly. If you see Jesus, remember where you see the 3 beams of light coming out of Jesus' head. Jesus has his beams open up, that's all. When you're looking at somebody from the front, you can't see all 3 of them. There's 3 across the back, you can't see any of those. You can see the ones on the side, you see the one in the front. There's one coming right at you right here. and the one in the throat. And so all you can really see is those three beings and a sphere of light around the person's head. And so at that moment, you have just entered into exactly the same level of consciousness that Jesus entered into at that moment. And Buddha and a lot of other people. All these ascended masters went through this, all 8,000 or so. They're just humans like us, they just got a little bit further ahead. And then once that has happened, at that moment, you are now on a completely different frequency of consciousness. And many things are now possible that were not possible before. Now, most people that have got to this level have then taken it to psychic worlds. They've used their mind to look through this third eye. I'm not saying it's a mistake, but potentially it isn't the best thing to do. You see, this leads into pure creation, where you are able to create anything. You can literally create anything at all. You can bring anything to you need or want or anything else like that. It's totally okay. But it's much more than a human thinking. You can create planets with the galaxies, the entire universe. Size doesn't matter in this case for sure. You can create anything on this. And anything is possible at that moment. But if you do create through your brain, like in the, remember the secret, the CD of the secret? There is a problem. And I think people that are doing what the secret said, probably a lot of them are discovering that this problem is. The brain is a polarized instrument. If you hold the brain in your hand, it flops open into two pieces, but a line right down the middle. One side is male, one side is female. The other way around. This side is male, this side is female. And if you use that or any of the lesser ways of bringing energy to you, what happens is you get whatever your intention is, but you will also get an equal and opposite force coming from behind you and you won't see it coming. And you'll get hit with exactly what you don't want. So it's like you get everything you want and then bam, you get exactly what you don't want. James Ray is a really good example of that. Yeah. And because it's just the reality. It's just the way it is. We have scientists, Dr. James Hart, who is a brain researcher, who I've been working with for some years now. He's one of the two primary brain researchers on Earth. And they discovered that through pure science. They were able to create things, but they found out that every time they did, they go, wow, this worked. Bam! It's like it'll come from back here. And they go, where did that come from? You know, how did that happen? Well, it'll happen every single time. It's just like a law of physics. If you have a force going this way, you have an equal and opposite force going the other way. If you push against the wall, it pushes back at you at the same amount. If you shoot a rocket down, it goes up this way. There's always an equal and opposite force, and it's because the instrument you're dealing with is polarized. However, once the third eye is open, and this is something that I have just learned in the last 3 months, and it's so amazing, and it has enabled me to make contact with beings that I've never been able to reach before. And I'd love to talk about that just a little bit, because it's important for our very survival, I think, I believe. What? Oh, yeah. I think I saw that else before that. Oh, yes. That's what it was. Thank you very much. Okay. Instead of connecting through the brain, which is what's being taught, all of you know pretty much, there's another way. And is that when you're in the heart, and you're in the tiny space of the heart, there are two spaces in there. There's an outer space and an inner space. Heart math is also figured that one out, because there's a toroidal field and a toroidal field inside of the other one. When you're inside the heart, instead of looking out through your eye using your brain, you can look out through the third eye using your heart. And this is in the spooky traditions and in many other traditions around the world. It's called the single eye of the heart. And when you look out through the heart, you can duct tape your eyes closed, but you can see the outer world perfectly. And but you don't see it in the way that you see it now. Here you're seeing the surface of things. Instead, you see all the subtle energies between us. It's astounding. You see, right now, there are like roots that are coming between us. There's these energy fields that move between us. As we walk by plants, there's all this energy that moves between us, and all these things that is going on. All kinds of levels, we don't see that. We're only seeing the surface of what they're doing. And when you do this with your heart, suddenly a whole nother world opens up. Another human sense opens up. We go from 5 to 6. It's a completely different one. It's amazing. You can learn about things. And at that point, a whole other world of consciousness, of beings, of living life appears. And it's amazing. You didn't know they were there. Your digital cameras are not going to pick it up. Nothing's going to see it, but your heart can. And it's so funny. It is from this place, is what my inner guidance has been telling you, that this is the place that we need to be, because it puts us on a frequency higher than human. At that point, you are not human. You are doing something that is not human. You are like an in-between place between human and the next level. And what happens is other kinds of life forms can come down and connect with you. It's easy for them to reach you at that point. It's difficult when you're just in human consciousness, or even if your third eye is opening and you're looking through your brain, it's not the same thing. And so this mapping of consciousness is a huge key. I know it's being taught by many people. This is nothing new. This was written down in the Vedas 6,000 years ago. This is nothing new. I'm just translating it from ancient terms into modern terminology so it can be understood more. And if you do this, if you focus on this, you'll come to this place where you can, first of all, solve all of your problems, your physical problems, your illnesses. You can heal anything from there, absolutely anything. You can bring anything to you, whatever you need, jobs, people, whatever it is. You can do anything without doing anything. It just will come to you. And you're not doing it for that reason. It's just what happens. Everything comes to you. When you create from the heart, instead of from the brain, the heart is not polarized. It is an absolutely unified field of consciousness. And so when an intention is put out from the heart and not the brain, it doesn't have this polarized thing coming from behind you. The heart has a wisdom that is beyond anything that we can kind of imagine. It knows how that if you ask for something, it gives it to you. You don't have anything, it doesn't really matter. It's just, everything's just energy. It's just energy. And it can give you anything that you need, but it will find a way to give it to you so that it does no harm to anyone, anywhere in existence. It's just clean, totally clean gift. And it's really, really fun. Again, that's not why we do it. It's a side effect. But that is the doorway. It opens up. It leads you into what we call ascension. It's true ascension from that point on. You will keep rising. Your consciousness will keep going up. Whatever you need, anything like it. You don't understand something, your heart will tell you exactly. It will tell you precisely what it is that you're trying to understand. And so evolution, spiritual evolution, goes very, very fast from that moment forward. And so I know you don't have to believe me. All I ask you to do is to try this and see if it's real. If it isn't real, throw it away and go find somebody else to help you. But if it is, use it, because to me, I know it's real. I've now talked to over 5,000 people that have been with this, and it's real. It's ancient. It's older than the earth. So, this is the core of what I want to give to you. Tomorrow I will define it very clear, which I can't do right now. And I'm going to try, that's why I'm going to put it up there, because it'll just confuse things. But once you know the basic map of where you're going, it really helps. If you read old literature about this, it's very confusing. Like even in my own organization, in terms of the Great White Brotherhood, when the ancient writings, when you read those things, when they're talking about the pineal gland, it's clear they didn't know what it was. They didn't really understand it. So what they said was, there's a flame of light that comes out of the pineal gland, and you have to bend the flame so that it looks over here. So you have to do this bending of the flame. It's not about the flame. It's about an eyeball that just has to be turned, so it's moving in that direction that they didn't understand. So now I'd like to shift this into another level. I need to know where we're out of time. What do you think, about 20 minutes? Oh, it's perfect. Okay. I want to tell you what happened when we did this. The first time I ever did this. I was with a group of 500 people, and I was starting an advanced workshop that I was being asked to do, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where we were going with it. And so when I started to think about what I was going to do, the angels came in, which would be spirits of light, and said, no, just go there with a blank mind. They said, thanks, Sam. They said, just don't know anything what you're doing. And they said, the information is in the people, figure it out. So I did. I kept looking inside people and saying, what's the answer? Trying to figure out where I was going with this. And on the second day or so, I really, it was like the weirdest workshop I've ever done in my life. I didn't know where I was going. For the first 3 days, I was just completely lost. And then somebody says, somebody brought up the whole thing about ETs and ITs, and started talking about it. And somebody brought up the idea of what was going on in Mexico with the plasma beams. And I go, okay, so we went with that. And I don't know if you know what's going on in Mexico, but it's been going on for about 20 years. It's the most documented case of UFOs in history. If you took everything else on Earth, there's more documentation on these things than everything else combined. And probably double or triple. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of video hours of them. They scan the floor. Okay, go ahead. They don't care if you do it. The ships are like this in the sky, right? They're that big. They fill the whole picture. And they say, go ahead, take the pictures. They allowed the Mexican government to form a committee of scientists to study them. And 7 times now, they've been told, in a certain spot, a certain time down at a minute, that these ships will come right out of solid rock and sit there, and they let them go up and study them and do anything they want. They don't care. Because they have no fears. None. They told me that you can put a kind of bomb right in the middle of one of the ships and blow it up and there's no effect. And so they're not really concerned about our military or anything else. And they have no intention of doing harm to us at all. They used to be on the surface of the earth. This is about, I finally had to sit there and ask them exactly when, because they kept they said, oh, a long time ago. It was about 1.5 million years ago. They were on the surface of the earth, and they were in physical bodies, not human, in a different kind of form, and they had created a science really similar to what we have now, electromagnetic fields and our psychic and all that stuff, and they started killing the earth. They started doing the same thing that we're doing right now, and they were getting desperate because they couldn't figure out how to stop it. And what they tell me is that a ship came out of the sky, some ET race, they got out, spoke in their language, and all they did was tell them something about themselves. And then they got back on the ship and left and never seen them since. They just injected this little left. And so they said it took them about 100 years to figure it out. And when they did, they found their bodies became pure light. and they can actually walk right through each other. I have video film of them even today when they're in their lava forms, is how they call them, where they walk right through each other. They're just pure, when they take those forms, they're just pure light. And they said that, so they walked around for a long time in bodies that were just pure light. And then they eventually realized that the body is just a projection of consciousness. That's all it is. This is how certain shamans can change their bodies from a human into a puma or something, or an eagle, because they can literally, it's just it's all it is. It's just a consciousness thing that we've connected in. We don't know that, and so we're stuck in it, and we can't understand how we can't fix anything that we fix, doesn't matter what it is. And so, and then, at one point, they dropped all that, and they just became little spheres of white light about this big. And they would float around in that, and they floated around for a long time until they realized, as the teachings that these ET gave them, came to the place where they realized that they were absolutely immortal, that they were never, ever, ever going to die. And when you get to that place, they said, you change your perspective on life. Like now, we live, say, 100 years. And so everything we do, we think, well, it's got to last 100 years. So we think about everything in that 100-year span, kind of. Or if we're really good people, we think 7 generations, then we think maybe 700 years. But it's still extremely limited. But they came to the point where they said, well, we have to think about hundreds of millions of years. They chose, and not everybody does this, because it's a possibility, and this is the possibility they took. They chose to stay connected with the third dimension and to Mother Earth. They chose to do that. And so, but they knew that they didn't want to stay on the surface because it's too dangerous out here. You know, all kinds of things happen. Tidal waves go over the top of the Rocky Mountains, comets hit, you name it, every kind of thing you can imagine happens on the surface. And inside the Earth, it's stable. And so they chose to go inside the Earth. Now, at first, they didn't go very far. They only went a few hundred feet. You remember about 10 years ago in Mexico, they discovered these huge selenite caves with these crystals that are 36 feet long, round crystals like that. These giant rooms open in very hot places. That's where they moved into. They moved first to the selenite caves. And they produced their own lights. Those caves were probably brilliant with light. And they lived inside of these crystals. And in there, they created their own little universes and worlds that they were learning how to do this. And that became their way of living. And they did this for a long time. Later, they went further into the Earth and into the mantle, where it's just pure liquid lava. And they discovered these geodes floating in the lava. They're huge. Some of them, the one that I was in that they took me into was, I would think, about a mile across. I've never seen a geode like this. And they're kind of flat and kind of rounded like this. They're not round like that, but they're more kind of that shape. Maybe it's the compression stuff or something, I don't know. And instead of little tiny pleasant crystals inside there, they're 3 or 4 feet long. They're huge. And they're giant, holding space in the middle. And they moved into there. These are quartz crystals in there, and they did the same thing, only got even better. And from there, they moved into the center of the Earth and connected directly to the heart of the Earth. At this point, they are nothing but extensions of Mother Earth. They're not Earth. But she is more than that. But they are directly connected to her directly. And well, one of the things that I just found out recently, and it's because of it was a Discovery Channel did a huge special, I think it was 2 hours long, I think, on the selenite caves. And first they found 1 and 2 and 3. Now they're finding hundreds of these caves. The only place that you ever saw these big, giant orange ships. I was going to show you a photograph. I didn't want to show you any images, but you know, you see them. I don't have it with me. The only place these ships are seen, initially for years, from about 1991, until about now, was in Mexico. Nowhere else. And then recently, in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years or something like that, they're starting to show up in the Four Corners area of the United States. And about a month or 6 weeks ago, they started showing up in France. All over France. There's lots of people who've seen them over there. They don't know what the heck they are. And so I'm watching this Discovery Channel or whatever it was on this things, and at the very end, they talk about settlement crystals, and the only place in the world that settlement crystals are found is in Mexico, the Four Corners area of the United States, and parts of Europe.